Hello, and welcome to the Learning to Slay the Beast podcast, a resilience podcast where we talk about all the challenging things that we're working to overcome, like anxiety, health, and relationship issues. My name is Sarah. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Learning to Slay the Beast podcast. My name is Sarah, and I'm happy to connect with you this week. We've recently had Mother's Day here in Ontario, Canada. It was a nice time to connect with family and enjoy the fruits of being a mom. And also, it's spring, and everyone's been really happy to see this spring. We had a winter. I wouldn't even say it was the worst winter, but it was just, we're always ready to see that go in North America, I think. So really excited for the spring and summer to come. And I'm sure you are thinking a lot about health. We always start to get that in the spring and summer. So this week, we're going to be looking at how to optimize our health and speaking with Dr. Monika Gostic, who is a scientist and nutrition coach. She is guiding female entrepreneurs towards a life without pain. She provides nutrition, mindset, mental health coaching, backed by carefully reviewed scientific research. So she's going to talk a lot about that. These are not tips and tricks that are kind of the latest fads or things that are really out there. She talks a lot about some of the basics, and really, we focus on nutrition. She talks a lot about the microbiome and gut health. Some of her interests are cancer research, as well as mental health. So you'll hear that come out a little bit in the conversation. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Dr. Monika Gostic and you get some wonderful tips for your health. So welcome, Dr. Monika Gostic, to the podcast. I'm happy to connect with you today.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
Excellent. And I'm excited to talk to you as well. So why don't we start with you providing a little bit about your background and tell us some of the things that you're into.
Yeah, of course. So first and foremost, I'm an academic. I've got quite a long history of scientific training. I have a Bachelor of Science in microbiology, a Master's of Science in biology with the bigger impact in molecular biology and biotechnology, and then a PhD in genetics, which is what brought me to Scotland, where I still am today.
Oh, wow.
And throughout these years of scientific research and just exploration of what interests me, I went from topics of development of the brain to how the cells work, to how the bacteria works. I was always very interested in viruses, so I also worked later on in a virology laboratory, and then finally ended up in cancer research, which is what was that kind of the last project that I've done. And alongside my scientific training and development as an academic, and now I am a lecturer at the university, I've always been super interested in nutrition and well-being and health because I have a personal story in that aspect as well.
Okay.
And it was absolutely incredible being able to use the scientific knowledge alongside with practical implication of nutrition science and exercise science. And here I am all these years later with my business and my movement that is called Breaking Bad. It's all about being balanced, authentic, and deserving.
Very cool. Yes. And your movement. I love the name of that. Do you mind sharing a little bit about in terms of your personal health story?
Yes, of course. I'm quite open about this because I feel like so many people can actually relate to what I went through, and so many people are still going through such experiences. And I really hope that they can realize that it does not need to be as hard and frustrating as it was for me and many others. So I was actually an overweight child my entire life. So as I was growing up, I was always overweight. Might be the combination of a lot of things mentally, physically, But just in general, what I've noticed is that culture of you need to fit into the society with beauty standards, so you need to be of a certain size. Mind you,
Mm-hmm.
that was 30 years ago. Obviously, things have changed now. But also, on top of that, is that concern for my health and well being, which was mostly expressed by my teachers at PE, physical education, and other role models in my life that were concerned about my health aspect of being so overweight as I was. And unfortunately, people around me were not very educated on healthy nutrition or how to help a child lose weight. So I was exposed to, let's say, forced dieting by people around me, and they were trying to help me. I understand that, but they were providing me half portions of food, or they would be putting limitations on what I'm allowed to eat, which in the end of the day led to a lot of binge eating.
Mm-hmm.
Also led to me being very successful in dieting for a certain amount of time, losing that weight, but really starving the whole time. And then as soon as I quit or as soon as I stumbled, I would feel incredibly guilty, and there was like massive feelings of shame, incompetence, and I would really have this negative self-talk, thinking, I can't even stick to a diet. I mean, honestly, I'm not even worth anything because of that. And that was really a big thing and a big theme around me and my life growing up. And it translated into a lot of different things. It translated into my relationships with my friends, into my relationships with, potential romantic partners, into a lot of different things, because I just felt like my worth was attached to how I look like and the size of me and all these kind of things. So as I was growing up, I tried every diet under the sun, from, the apple cider vinegar to keto diet. At that time when I was growing up, it was very popular, Dr. Atkins diet,
Mm-hmm.
which is essentially kind of a low carb, but at the same time, you're not supposed to be mixing the groups, the macronutrient groups. So if you're eating protein, you need to eat veg, you're not allowed to eat carbs. But if you're eating carbs, again, you need to eat veg with it and not allowed to eat protein. Types of diets like that. Again, I was successful until I wasn't. And I remember at one point, I did exactly what everyone tells you to do, or at least most personal trainers tell you to do, is eat less and exercise more.
Mm-hmm.
And I started vigorously exercising, and my nutrition pretty much looked at everything was steamed or cooked with water. So even the chicken breast, I wouldn't use any olive oil because that's calories,
Mm-hmm.
and just cook it on water. And it was pretty tasteless, to be honest. And I would be exercising, running 5Ks, walking up and down the stairs, and all these kind of things. And I've lost a lot of weight. And I remember that one moment where I actually just absolutely crashed, and I fell into a massive depressive spell where I couldn't get myself out of it for about 2 weeks. And all I did was lie down at home, did minimum stuff for the university, and basically I called it committed carbocide. So every possible carb that came my way, I ate it because I just could not hold off anymore. Everything from bread to pasta, everything that I was saying no to, I then just completely binged on. And I remember that moment, I just felt so defeated. And I was like, no, there must be a better way. There must be a better way than this. This is destructive on so many levels. So, lucky for me, I've been approached by a young lady in the gym that I was going to, and she saw how hard I'm trying. And she mentioned that she could help me because she was a health coach. And again, mind you, 20 years ago, health coaches were quite frowned upon. That wasn't really a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what to do with this, but I did know that I tried a lot of things on my own and it just didn't work. So I said, right, this is the last thing I'm ever going to try. If this doesn't work, then that's it. Well, long story short, I managed to lose 25 kilos, which is 55 pounds of weight, and keep it off until now. So for life, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And as I had this personal experience, and with my scientific career going alongside as well, I started connecting the dots. And then I started being really, really curious. What is it that drove me into that depressive spell? What is it about certain foods that make me feel so incredibly happy afterwards? And what is it about certain foods that just drain me of my energy after I eat them? Just completely, like, I just want to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So I started finding these answers in scientific literature, in a lot of different health podcasts, in a lot of different online health pages from World Health Organization or Health Matters, or from various different experts in the field. And I came across the term microbiome. And that one was
Mm.
like, ooh, that's really interesting. Microbiome sounds interesting, especially because I studied microbiology and
Mm-hmm.
my knowledge on microbes and everything that goes around it is quite extensive. So I started looking into microbiome, and the entire universe of information opened up, and my perspective shifted, and everything just started to make sense. I'm like, wow, this is incredible. And I finally, for the first time in my life, got answers to a lot of questions that I've been asking myself. And this is kind of how I then decided to develop this movement of Breaking Bad, because I feel like, there's two references in there. There's the Breaking Bad show that most of us know, and there's also a film, Bad Moms. So the both of them there. Because I felt like my own personal experience is, I've got the education, I've been working so hard, I've been doing everything that I was supposed to be doing in quotation marks. But in the end of the day, I ended up in such a low, in such a, well, luckily I didn't get cancer, but, in such a negative state, physically and mentally, that at that moment I didn't see the way out. And that was a consequence of mistreatment for myself. I mistreated myself and my own body, all in the pursuit of this certain size of the body to fit in society and to also stop hearing from people, when are you going to lose weight?
Mm-hmm.
So it really was disappointing. The medical system let me down because they don't really prescribe any lifestyle advice, because they're not trained in that, and that's okay, because you do have people like me who are trained in lifestyle medicine who can give you this advice. And I was also let down by society, just like in the Bad Mums movie, if you've ever seen it,
Mm-hmm.
is this impossible standards that they impose on us. No matter where you are, we've all got these cultural differences, but there are always these impossible standards of you need to be a certain way to be accepted in the tribe of this crowd. Luckily, this is changing. But for me, that meant that I was going to lengths, really almost killing myself in order to be accepted, to be a valuable member of society, and to be noticed as a person who I am. And I then decided, you know what? I'm putting a stop to this. I'm breaking bad. The medical system needs a little bit push, and they are getting pushed. They're actually being so good. They are learning, they're growing, things are changing. But at the same time, we as society need to stop looking at health just as a size, because
Mm-hmm.
it couldn't be further than this. I have a lot of clients who are very lean. I also work with a lot of athletes who obviously, have muscle mass incredible. They have physique, they have six pack, but in the end of the day, they have quite a lot of gastrointestinal problems. They've got a lot of anxiety. They struggle with a lot of skin conditions. So things that are not really visible, they're not linked to your physique. It's got nothing to do with how heavy you are. In most cases, obviously, if you are within heavy parameters, normal parameters, sorry. So that's kind of why and how I got to where I am right now. And it's been actually a wonderful journey. It's been incredible.
Wow, yeah, no, that's definitely quite a journey. And I think I can, really identify with some of it. I was always a heavier child. I did go through a big weight loss change after my daughter was born, and got really heavy into training, and but then that started to really become challenging. Like my restrictive eating was just beyond like sort of what you said, like I kind of just tanked. So very interested to hear kind of how you've recovered. I'm sure there's been a real mental part of that as well, like in terms of being able to look at your body differently. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about kind of what you're doing in your practice to support chronic pain and different conditions. And then, yeah, if you want to share more about in terms of the recovery from the challenges that you had previously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the way that I work is a little bit different to what most nutritionists do. I practice something that is called lifestyle medicine, and that's become a bit more known term recently, but it's all about really prescribing lifestyle to people in order to manage their health and to minimize the impact of the disease as much as possible through the lifestyle adjustments. And I know quite a lot of times people go like, I need to exercise, I need to drink more water, that's so boring. But these things actually work. They're incredibly, incredibly important, and you don't need to go into extremes like certain people do. You don't need to stop eating for 18 hours a day. There's so many ways to get healthy, and there's no one right way. So in my program, in my BAD membership, I actually really stress that they will not see blueprints. They will also not see meal plans with me because there is no one way that fits all. And when it comes to nutrition, that's one thing that we really need to start looking into a little bit more in detail. As a geneticist, I was always taught that, we take twins and we do studies on twins and we can compare genes and the mutations and all these kind of things. And it works really well. And we love working with twin cohorts. But then as I started studying microbiome and getting involved in in research in microbiome and understanding the studies and how they're designed and what's happening, I really learned that, the microbiome, even of twins, is so diverse that actually it's been said that our microbiome is more unique than our fingerprint. So you can really imagine what an impact that has to everything else that we do. And for those who don't know what a microbiome is basically a gathering of all the microorganisms and whatever they produce inside of our body or even on top of our body. So when we do talk about microbiome, we mostly refer to gut health, gut microbiome. That's pretty much the buzzword right now. But we have microbiome on our skin, in our hands. There is very important vaginal microbiome that's incredibly important. Women's health and research on it is expanding right now. So there's microbiome all over. We're very, very dependent on these microorganisms on us. And there's several theories as to why we have started disrupting our microbiome. But the common ground to everything is that recent rise in non-communicable diseases, which are diseases that cannot be transferred from one person to another, so not infectious diseases, but things like heart conditions or fibromyalgia, arthritis, diabetes, polycystic ovary syndrome, endometriosis. A lot of these things can actually nowadays be linked to the dysbiosis or imbalance in our gut microbiome. And it's becoming increasingly more clear that we do need to personalize this lifestyle practice and that we need to understand how we eat. And not just in terms of calories and macronutrients, because that's what most athletes do or what personal trainers recommend to people. But also you need to put into account that different people have different abilities of absorption. So you can eat all the protein on the planet you want. If your gut is not functioning as it should be, it will not absorb those nutrients. So you will not actually utilize them. And this is where it comes to this glitch in communication as to
Mm.
how to eat, why to eat, and all of these kind of things. So in my Breaking Bad method, what I teach people is how to start eating on a daily basis for them. And I don't work with macros, I don't work with calories. I take them as a person they are and I look at their entire life. So, what is your job? How many hours a day do you sit? How stressful is your household? How many kids do you have? Do you have a pet? By the way, pets are always a very good idea. They contribute to diversity of our microbiome. So yes to pets. But all these things need to be taken into account, and you want to look at them in order to understand why this individual has come to the point to where they are right now. And as you start understanding that, you can start guiding them day by day, step by step, what changes to make slowly so they're not overwhelmed and it can be a sustainable change in order to serve the health of their gut microbiome. And that's essentially what I do in my practice. I look into nutrition as a first thing, and then I start prescribing other things such as, how is your sleep? Let's have a look at your sleep. Is there anything that you struggle with? If you struggle with sleep, why do you struggle with sleep? Is it chronic stress? Is it a mental health related condition? Is it because you have a baby? Is it anything else? And once I have these answers, I can then guide the person to, okay, let's do step A, step B, step C in order to start improving your sleep. Improved sleep leads to not just regeneration of muscles, also regeneration of brain cells. So many amazing things, and so on and so on. But I feel like I've left the second part of your question out. Can you repeat that one for me, please?
Yeah, no, I was wondering how, you sort of made those changes yourself and then how you're supporting those with chronic conditions. So, I mean, I think you're sort of putting the two together, but I think that's probably fitting. I'm
Yeah.
sure it's a similar method and that's kind of where you're at, right? Are there certain conditions that you tend to work with more in terms of, helping people with your nutrition coaching?
Yes, they are, but purely because they're more prevalent, or at least more prevalent amongst the audience that is following me. So, one of the most common conditions that I have with my people is IBS, or
Mhm.
irritable bowel syndrome. So, honestly, most of my clients struggle with that. In fact, I am now so familiar with IBS, they've actually identified it with one of my family members who did not know they had it and struggled for years and years and years. And just as I was listening to the story and the symptoms, I was like, wait a minute, you've got IBS. And I'm like,
Ah,
oh my gosh, it's incredible what you can learn from that. So that's one of the most frequent ones and common ones. I also work a lot with people with fibromyalgia.
mm,
That is quite a severe condition. Well, it is a spectrum, but it can be very debilitating to the point that some of my clients need walking aid because it is absolutely, yeah, it's impacting their mobility to that point. And fibromyalgia is also the course that I'm starting to run end of February, and it's going to be a 12-week live online course for those people who want to join and see the solutions that are out there for fibromyalgia and how to manage it as well as possible. But then on top of all of these things, there's so many people that struggle with anxiety that come to
mhm.
me. And we've started noticing that actually anxiety is tightly linked to your gut health and everything else that lifestyle medicine covers. So for those people who do not suffer with clinical depression, the things that I cover in my BAD methods, they improve their condition as well to like quite significantly. Um, Plenty people with arthritis, and I'm talking about various different types of arthritis, have
Mhm.
come to me to manage inflammation. And then you also have various skin conditions such as eczemas and psoriasis, which tend to flare up for people when they're under stress or any other reasons, and they come to me as well. So those are really the most common ones, but that doesn't exclude obviously diabetes. I'm quite surprised I don't have anyone who's diabetic, to be
Oh, wow.
honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I do have several people who are pre-diabetic,
Mm.
and yeah, that's definitely something that can be and is very well known to be managed through lifestyle changes in a very good way. So, what I do as a first thing when a person comes to me, we have a free 15-minute introduction call so that I actually get the idea of whether I am able to help this person or not. Unfortunately, I can't help everyone. It really depends on how far down they are and what type of condition it is. And the people that I can help, then I tell them that obviously this is the way that I'm working. As a next step, what I usually suggest is for them to go onto my website where I have my partners listed and order a blood test. And with this blood test, what we usually check is the overall health and the levels of specific biomarkers. And those biomarkers check for the levels of inflammation in your body, your cholesterol levels, your hormonal levels, the essentials really that you want to have a good overview of if you're trying to be healthy and if you're trying to manage a chronic condition. So once we have those results, what is really good is that we have this baseline on paper that tells us where we're at, and that helps me also inform how will I take this client forward and how will I help them and what is the most important thing that I need to focus on. And as we have these results, what we then do is I work through an app and my client downloads an app and then they start logging in their daily behaviors. Now I can assign certain meal plans, certain exercises through an app. I collaborate with a lot of personal trainers, so they design exercises that are specifically tailored to the need of my client, and that can be assigned through an app. But I don't really like to work with meal plans again because I don't believe in that blueprint. I do supply them with a lot of interesting and tasty recipes though, just so that they have motivation and inspiration to know in what direction I want them to go.
Mm.
And then it's just daily habit. It's a daily habit. You log in your food into that specific app and I see it, and then we can have this discussion in our private conversation as to what can be changed, what can be different, how can we shift the ratios. Every time I get feedback, I always have the client's goal in mind. So whether we're minimizing inflammation, whether we're working on your sports performance, whether we're working on improving energy levels, that is basically what I'm thinking of when I give you the feedback on your daily habits. So that is it in a nutshell.
That's great. And so I know you've said like that really a lot of what you're recommending is super customized. Is there anything that you're seeing or maybe that you implemented yourself as you were kind of moving through this that is more general? Like, do you find people aren't eating enough protein in their meals? Is that something you're recommending a lot? Are you finding, you're kind of like, oh, let's play with, removing gluten or dairy? Like, are there anything like that is a little more general that seems to be common?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I quite like that one. First one is actually water.
Ah, okay.
People do not tend to drink enough water.
I know. It's so hard in the
They
winter too.
yes, I know. I love herbal teas, and I'm just so glad that I have a supply of herbal teas from a local business, like
Mm.
loose leaf teas, that I know, that doesn't have any nasties in. And honestly, the difference it makes to my gut and my overall well-being is fantastic. But yeah, water, green and black tea have actually been studied at length and named pretty much the healthiest drinks on planet.
Mm.
Um, I think obviously we could talk about kombucha as well and stuff like that. But if you include more water, start drinking green tea and black tea, then that's definitely a blueprint answer that I can say, yes, that works for everyone.
Yeah.
And most people are underhydrated. Some people tend to overhydrate, but again, that's just a term of adjustment. What I've noticed with a lot of Western cultures and people who follow the SAD diet, which is standard American diet, those people tend to overconsume other liquid calories, such as fizzy drinks, juices, perhaps various takeaway coffees that contain syrups and other stuff, not just coffee.
Hmm.
And that's it's hard to follow up how much you've actually consumed because you just drink it and forget about it. So
Mm-hmm.
if you just stick to drinking enough water as a first thing in your day, and what enough water is different for every single person because we all have different mass, and we need to hydrate all that mass, not just the blank 1.25 liters or 2 liters a day. That's definitely something that I would recommend. As it comes to protein, what I've noticed and what tends to be a trend is that the general population used to undereat protein,
Mm-hmm.
and that has definitely changed, especially lately when the keto diet came out. People are
Mm-hmm.
significantly over consuming protein, and it's the same amongst athletes, all in the name of seeking those gains and building muscle. People actually are eating way too much protein, and it's been shown even in elderly population that reducing the amount of protein has led to better recovery, to less sarcopenia, which means muscle loss.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite an interesting things that are coming out, and it's also been shown that we overconsume animal protein, which contains an amino acid leucine, which tends to be the one that is causing us quite a few problems in our gut. So substituting that simply by consuming a little bit more of plant-based protein, so just in general foods that contain protein, such as beans and legumes and nuts and seeds, actually significantly improves health outcomes of people all over the place. So we don't actually need as much protein as people think that we do. And the other thing that I recommend, and I can just blanket this recommendation to everyone on this planet, is that we should eat more vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
And most people don't eat enough. A lot of times when I see plates of many people, they would have like steak and potato, and they would have the tiniest amount of peas on the side, and that ratio can easily be shifted. You can easily have a lot more veggies, but not just a single type of vegetables. What we need is variety, and this all comes back to microbiome and the fact that the more variety we have in our gut, the healthier we tend to be. So I would definitely recommend people drink more water, move your body in some way throughout the day, and definitely try and get at least 5 to 7 different types of vegetables into your system if you can on a daily basis. But if you're only starting out, then try on a weekly basis and then work up from there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What about fruit? Like, are you finding that something that you generally, or really that's a balance depending on what other things people are eating in terms of carbohydrates?
Fruit is actually absolutely fantastic. It's been shown that people who ate more fruit to other people have actually had healthier lives, and lower cholesterol and a lot of other stuff. So fruit
Hmm.
has very positive outcomes. I feel what has been messaged, the message has been sent out there was that, well, fruit has sugar, therefore is bad.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the message that is out there, and people are
Yeah.
like, oh, you should minimize the amount of fruit that you're eating. because it contains sugar, and sugar is what's bad for you. Now, what people are forgetting there is that there's refined sugar is the one that we add to stuff, that it's basically added to anything nowadays. Even, refined sugar is added to bread that you buy in a shop. But then there's sugar that comes in a natural form in a banana or an apple, and that is never on its own. And you will unlikely overeat sugar that you get from fruit because of other nutrients that fruit brings us, such as a lot of water. You actually get a lot of water with fruit consumption, but also a lot of fiber. Fruit contains fiber, and fiber is the nutrient that majority population on this planet lacks. And we actually, in scientific research, we believe that it is fiber and not the protein that people should start consuming significantly more in order for us to heal the inflammation in the gut and actually start living a higher quality of life and reducing chronic inflammation and with this chronic conditions.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that was something like that I really struggled with because I was sort of on a different macronutrient plan. And so then it was like, as I started to lose more weight, they would take things away. And it got where I was like not eating any fruit. And I was like, this just doesn't seem right. Like I'm not having any of those nutrients coming in. And yeah, so it can be challenging for people if they're kind of doing different plans to really know
Absolutely.
where to put it all together, right? And the vegetables I think makes a lot of sense for sure. But yeah, then fruit seems to be this other kind of demonized, similar to carbs, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I have to stress here that obviously, if you are in specific sports areas, such as bodybuilding, for example, then my advice does not go with what people are doing in bodybuilding, because
Mm-hmm.
that is highly specialized way of eating, a specialized way of training. And even elite bodybuilders themselves, they openly talk about the way that they manipulate nutrients and how they do all this in order to get the physique that they have, to like really low body fat.
Mm-hmm.
However, they also openly talk about how unhealthy that actually is. And it is well known amongst female bodybuilders that they tend to lose their periods,
Mm-hmm.
which can show you the impact that that manipulation of nutrients and the way that they're treating their body to lose all that body fat, how that actually affects your hormonal balance and your hormonal function. So as women, we need to follow different dietary advice than men need to follow, especially if you're ovulating women. If you're going through your monthly cycle, there's different times of the cycle when it's appropriate to cut carbs. There's different times of the cycle when it's appropriate to fast, for example. And then there's times of the cycle where you really want to add extra fat into it, or when you really want to increase the consumption of carbs. So understanding this and understanding how your body functions, how your cycle works, and how your hormones are actually dependent on what you eat is extremely important. So this is why I started specializing in chronic conditions, not simply in weight loss or in nutrition for performance sports, because my philosophy is all about health first. And the way that I teach and the way that I promote my business and the whole Breaking Bad movement is health first. And as we go and actually fix the root of the cause,
Mm-hmm.
which is completely different protocol to people who go to the gym in order to lose weight, right?
Mm-hmm.
I work in ways of, let's fix your gut first. And as we're fixing your gut, the changes that we make and the inflammation that we reduce and the hormones that we balance, they will then take care of your cravings, they will take care of your physique, they will take care of the reserves of fat, they will start balancing your thyroid again, they will give you less hot flashes if you're menopausal or perimenopausal. that kind of then comes with the side effects of you're going to start feeling really good in your body and you're going to lose weight as a side effect. So that is the philosophy that I'm taking. But most people are going simply into cut calories, make sure you
Mhm.
hit your macros, and go into the gym and work out. And that's a very different approach that does not necessarily lead to a healthy outcome.
Yeah, I think that's a really important distinction because that is kind of where I was. It was like, okay, how do I lose weight? And it was meant to be sustainable, but you're right. There was also, I was being trained by someone who was a bodybuilder. And so things were very, very low um, nutrients to try to get that low body fat. So I think, yeah, you're making a lot of really good distinctions, and people need to be really clear on, I think, what they want. And I think there is a real movement now to kind of, I hear so much about people talking about balancing their hormones and so much more about just focus on health. And that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I'm like, I just want to actually feel healthy and have energy and be able to move and eat things that, are good for my body and all of that kind of stuff. So I think what you're doing really makes a lot of sense. And I think it's probably really helpful for people.
Yeah, I sure hope so. And well done for you on and going on this journey. It's not easy to
No.
say, okay, well, I need to pivot because I just simply don't want what I used to want. So
Yeah.
that's a step forward. And you need to understand that you are strong for being able to do that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you as well. Like obviously, you've been working at this for quite some time. Um, and so I guess what are some of the lifestyle things that you talk to people about in terms of preventing chronic illness later in life? Like you mentioned, you're working with people with pre-diabetes, things like that. Is there anything that, say somebody's like, okay, I'm in my 20s or I'm in my 30s or early first, like, and I want to start to make changes, but I'm concerned about illness later. Where can they start? Is like water the best thing? Like start with just those small changes?
Yeah, there's quite a few things, and I absolutely love this question because we hold a very big power in our own hands over our own health. So, what people can do is, in terms of lifestyle changes, is small step consistently, and then obviously improve as they learn and as they go. The first thing, obviously, start drinking more water, like I said. The second thing, what I tend to do with my clients is shift the ratio of, as we mentioned before, overconsumption of protein to more plants in their diet. Now, why I don't make them stop eating meat, I don't make them go off dairy, I don't make them make any such sacrifices. However, I do recommend that they also include sources from beans, pulses, nuts, nightshades, dark leafy greens, because those are the plants that contain components that are healing for us, in
Mm-hmm.
simple terms. Those components, when we're talking about microbiome, as you can imagine, inside of us, inside of our microbiome, we've got a universe of bugs, right? There's just gazillion of them in there. And if I oversimplify, we can separate them onto goodies and baddies. Now, the foods that people tend to eat, such as steak and a lot of chicken and beef and pork, and then they would have something like pasta with it or potatoes, and then they would have a little bit of veggies. Now, those type of foods tend to feed the bacteria in our gut that, as a consequence of being fed that food, produce certain things that trigger inflammation inside of us, and they're irritable for our gut. And what they start causing is kind of like a little bit of a Star Wars scenario inside of us. So even by reducing the amount of meat and certain foods that you consume every single day, every single week, and replacing that with the foods such as nightshades and dark leafy greens and other veggies, root veggies, nuts and seeds, and beans and pulses, those are the ones that feed the goodies inside of our gut. So when you change that ratio on your plate and you feed both of them, but mostly you feed more of the goodies, what you do is that you provide the food for the goodies in abundance and just a little bit of food for the baddies. So the goodies then keep the baddies in check. And the baddies cannot cause Star Wars scenario. They can't rebel. There's no rebellion in there because they're kept in check. However, if the scenario is inverse, which is what most of my clients tend to have before they join the program, they overeat certain foods and they undereat the others, they don't hydrate enough, they don't move their bodies, then they basically cultivate the bodies in their gut and they tend to encourage the Star Wars and rebellion scenario, right? So then it's constantly laser shooting and fighting and whatever inside of our gut, and that erodes our gut wall and it starts causing our protective layers to get smaller and smaller and smaller to the point where there can be holes in there. We call this leaky gut syndrome. And as soon as there's holes in there, suddenly all those bacteria have access directly to the nerves that are outside. One of those nerves leads directly into our brain. They also have access to the bloodstream. They could enter there, and that could lead to sepsis possibly. Or the things that are in our gut and would normally be pooped out can be transferred into other organs all around our body. So that's what I'm trying to do with my clients, and that's what everyone who's got chronic conditions, this is where they can start, is simply start shifting the ratios of what's on your plate, hydrating, and movement. I keep mentioning that is actually a really important one and also been shown to have a massive impact on our gut health. And it doesn't have to be bodybuilding, doesn't have to be powerlifting. You know, I'm a powerlifter, so a lot of people get scared. Oh, if I start working with you, will I have to start deadlifting so much? And I'm like, no, movement simply means moving your body and there's so many ways that you can do that. You can go for a walk, you can do chores at home, you can do dance on your Wii or Nintendo or whatever you've got, you know, it doesn't matter. Just move somehow. So these are really the key aspects of transforming your health. And you can start with that simply at home. And the good part about it is that it shouldn't have any side effects because you're starting to provide your body with the stuff that it actually needs. And you're taking the excess of what you're normally providing your body away. So your body's not struggling anymore. So if people are pre-diabetic, they would definitely benefit from drinking more water, having less of the meats and more of the vegetables, and moving their body. Simply with these 3 steps, they would be definitely improving their blood biomarkers.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's really helpful to those listening. Like it's, sometimes just trying to make it simple, right? Yeah, this is great. I mean, I think you've touched on so much, like in terms of what your program covers and a lot of your focus on chronic illness, mental health, we talked a bit about, and the gut microbiome. Any other key pieces of advice or tips, tools that you would want to mention before we wrap up?
Just in general, be mindful that when you go out there, that you are completely unique individual, and with your unique microbiome, you might want to do your research, yes, absolutely, but don't just blindly follow a diet because it worked for a white middle-aged man, or worse, white 20-year-old man. As women, we're very different, but also if you're a man in your 50s and 60s, it's a completely different story. If you are a person of any other background but Caucasian, that again, it's a different story. So be mindful that you are unique, and blueprinted diets and what has worked for one influencer out there does not necessarily mean it's a right thing for you. And for a lot of people, they don't tend to take these things quite seriously, but you can damage yourself for life if you continue pushing something that is harming you. Um, what is very good, luckily, and what I absolutely love about our gut microbiome is that it can be changed within 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's incredible. So, if you decide right now, say, I've listened to Dr. Monica, I agree with what she says, I think that that makes sense, I'm going to start eating more veggies. Guess what? In 24 hours after you've eaten more veggies, your gut microbiome is already going to have the shift. And you're going to start observing amazing changes in your bowel movement, in your energy levels, in your skin tone. I mean, the best compliment that I've got from one of my clients, it was not about my body size or shape or whatever, but it was about the whiteness of my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
She looked into my eyes and she said, "You've got the whitest eyes that I've ever seen." And I was like, "Oh, that's such a weird compliment to give." But then as I delved into kind of the research behind and the biology behind all of that, well, that indicates health. And if your eyes are not, clear and wide, that might be, some people have a slightly yellowish eyes.
Mm-hmm.
That might be an indication that maybe some parts of your body are not functioning the way that they should. So start tuning into your body. Don't listen to influencers. Make sure you do things that are right for you. It's not okay to feel hungry. A little bit hungry, yes, but like proper hunger attacks and starvation and cravings, that's a consequence of imbalanced gut and imbalanced nutrients. You also shouldn't be feeling low on energy. You should actually be full of energy and be able to deal with your day with ease. And if you're not, then maybe it's time to look into how you're eating, what are your habits, and also how much stress you're allowing into your life. I think that
Mm-hmm.
that covers it all.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's really hopeful too, to know like, oh, you could quickly make some changes and start to feel those really fast. I think that's really great. I really appreciate this conversation, a really interesting story for sure. And your program sounds great. How can listeners find out more about you? Is it best social media or do you have a website?
I have both. What's really good with the internet nowadays is that you can simply Google my name, Dr.
Hmm.
Monika Gostic, and you will find everything. So my website is monikagostic.com, but I am on all social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. You can find me there. On TikTok, I mostly use for my training vlogs. So if you're interested in how I'm trying to be better at powerlifting, then you can follow me there. But for general nutrition advice, I do have a Facebook community where I post all my geeky findings on a daily basis, and you can learn about nutrition together with the rest of them. We share recipes. We've got an accountability chat as well that you can join and just simply start putting one foot in front of the other on your journey to healthier gut.
Okay, that sounds great. I will link up to as many of those as I can in the show notes. And I really appreciate your time today. Really fascinating and I think really hopeful conversation for everybody.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. It was a pleasure being here, and thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much to Dr. Monika Gostic for all of her information that she provided today. I really enjoyed talking about gut health and microbiome. And then, of course, I'm someone who's interested in how to get through chronic illness, chronic pain, all of those types of things. Please check out more information from Dr. Monika Gostic. She can be reached through monikagostic.com. She talked about her Facebook community. I would just suggest searching Facebook Monika Gostic and connecting with her through there if you are interested in learning a little bit more about her take on how to optimize your health. Thanks so much and have a great week. Thank you for listening to the Learning to Slay the Beast podcast. Please keep in mind, this podcast is not intended to be medical or professional advice. If you'd like to hear more from me, you can follow me on social media, Instagram and TikTok at Sarah Lady Gluten, or Facebook, Sarah_gluten-free lady. You can also visit my website, which includes author information, speaking information, and more info on the podcast at www.se-german.com. If you like the podcast, please feel free to review the podcast on your favorite platform and also subscribe because it means that it will show up for you every week on your favorite podcast platform. Also, we've just started to have the ability to support the podcast. You can find this link in my Instagram bio or visit Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/learning to slay the beasts. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.